Welcome everyone to Thursday Tech Talk. Yay, it's Thursday. Does that mean anything to anybody?
Almost the weekend.
No.
Almost the weekend, yeah. Almost Friday, but you know.
Dusty calls it pre-Friday.
Yeah.
Another week has flown by. Let's put it that way. Time just
Yeah,
flown
that's
fast.
true. I must admit, some days seem like to go forever. I think it was Teresa and I were talking yesterday. Some days last forever, but then you go, it's the 29th. Where did the month go?
Yeah.
Right? Weren't we just like in lockdown in April? And anyway. So again, I want to welcome you to Tech Talk, and we are very fortunate this morning to have a guest speaker. We have a member from the Windsor area, Thomas Papantonis. Oh, I practiced and I still messed it up. My apologies, Thomas.
No, don't worry about it.
He is the owner of MLP Technologies. And as I mentioned, they're from Whiskey Town. You guys have been holding out. I had no idea you were known as Whiskey Town.
I think that's recent. That's been like a recent rebranding, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, is it? Okay, because they
Yeah.
said that your main distillery has been there for like 18
Well, the distillery's been there, but the badge of like Whiskey Town, I think it's
They're trying to get rid of the automotive capital of Canada feel, and they're turning us into more of a, drunk tank. No, so sorry.
Well, if they throw in the pizza at least, pizza and booze, at least it goes hand in hand, right? I mean,
We got great pizza down here, don't we?
we do.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
For 2.5 years, and I could not come back without getting a pizza and a gyro from here because I could not find anything decent anywhere in the kitchen or Waterloo area that I was at. It just wasn't the same.
Oh no! Oh no!
That Hiram Walker's been there for a long time on the river.
Yeah. Yes, that's it. Yeah, 1850 something. I'm gonna say it was the mid 1800s. I'll go with that. So yes, again, we'll welcome Thomas as a member of this great city, and he's going to talk to us today about customer user requirements, right?
No, SaaS protection, software as a service is what I'll be talking about. So I'll be talking about in light of, I'm sure a lot of you are either using Microsoft 365 or Google G Suite services, the cloud-based software as a service services. I'm sure many of you if you use Microsoft services, Microsoft 365, I'm sure a lot of you over the last few weeks encountered the outages that Microsoft had. And it's been a bit of a thing. I noticed that a lot of people talking to some of my vendors and a few people, they don't realize a few things when it comes to when you first set up with Microsoft, and that they don't provide you with any data loss. Really, they provide the 99. If you read the contract, which I'm going to put my hand up and say I probably didn't read all of it, like most of us probably did when we signed up for our services. You don't get. They guarantee the 99.999% uptime, which, given the week of outages that they've had, that probably covers the rest of their quota for the month or the year. They got to play it even keel. But what happens is if there's any data loss at that time, or any data loss in general, even if it's an employee who deletes a file, which is probably more often the case than not, you can't, very rarely, in most cases, you don't have a backup sitting on Microsoft services or servers. You can't restore from that file. If that file's gone, that file's gone if you don't have a backup. So, just talk about that. What's called the shared responsibility model. Microsoft has set this up, but for the most part, it sits between, it kind of resonates with all these types of services. I'll share a document with everybody to review, and then kind of talk about that. And again, just we have, our company has a product that does the SaaS backup protection. It covers, both Microsoft 365 and Google Workplaces, which new rebranded names as of recently. So yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that. So sorry, I didn't mean to butt in there, and Catherine knows already. So
that's absolutely no problem. I'm just going to mention to all our members, if you can stay muted while Thomas is doing his presentation, so that any background or phones, and I'm the worst offender for that one, ring, it won't interrupt Thomas. And save your questions for the end, because Thomas has given us some time to ask questions at the end.
What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to post some contact information in the chat, plus the link to the document that I'll be referencing, so everyone can kind of take a look at it, and then I'm going to share it when I get to that point. So I'll just post it in the chat right now. Feel free to copy and paste and access the link. So.
All right. And so, Todd, you, if I understand correctly, you've been running MLP since 2013.
Yeah, there's a bit of history all across the way there. I'll do my best to give the Coles Notes version of it all.
Okay.
So I won't take up too much time there, but I mean, I started out as a sole proprietor back in 2003, still in school. Thought, hey, help out friends and family and grow from there. Finished school 2008, August 2008. I'm not sure if anybody really catches that time frame familiarity. Decided to take the chance and open up a store. I had the grand opening weekend on Saturday. The Monday, every politician came out and said we're in a global recession. Yay me. So I held out there for a little bit, worked it out. Unfortunately, I had to close up there. Then I kept trying to build the business working a 9 to 5 and then trying to grow 5 to 9, getting nowhere. Left Windsor for 2.5 years. Came back. 2013 is where I renamed the parent corporation and the business from Titan Entity Firms and Titan Electronics, respectively, to MLP Holdings and MLP Technologies. From there, I started again, a lot of situations. Most of my career was always contract to contract, so I had the same situation. But with the business now, I had the opportunity to have a few different contracts at the same time and at least make some opportunities of it. Been working on transitioning from break-fix model of business to the managed service provider model. I've partnered up with a lot of different people and partners along the way to help make that happen. So now we provide services in the areas of IT, security, and communications. And I'm just looking forward to, that's all about it right there. That's the quickest summary I can give, kind of highlights everything. So I'm just looking forward to, just talking to everybody today and seeing if I can educate and also answer some questions.
Okay, and your target market is right, the small businesses?
Yeah, small, medium-sized business is target market. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
It's just myself wearing every hat, so I know that I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. So I definitely don't want to do that, because that's where you start doing that slippery slope of going downhill after. So.
Well, and usually when somebody's computer goes down, especially if it goes down, like having an issue like you and Dave were talking about is one thing. But if my computer goes down, I'm dead in the water until you fix it. So.
Well, and that's just it, right? And I mean, the nice thing is that with all of our products and services now, once we get everybody set up, I mean, if it's a brand new install or a massive upgrade, we need to be there physically to, install the hardware, run the wires, do anything of the sorts. 9 times out of 10 after that, with everything that we have, all our products and services, we can do everything pretty much remotely. We can do everything from push updates, push software, uninstall software, remote support. We can pretty much do everything. As long as it's not a physical hardware situation, there's not much we can't do remotely at that point with all the products and services that we have available.
So you use like a remote
remote management and monitoring, so we can actually keep an eye on the computer. We don't keep an eye on the data. I always stress that, because I don't know how people understand when we say remote monitoring and management. So we don't see data, we just see, but we do see performance of the computer, hardware specifications. So if we see that something's running a little too hard too often, like the processor's running too high, we can recommend an upgrade. Or if there's memory exceeding memory thresholds, suggest memory upgrades. Or if the hard drive itself is actually just, you get an alert saying it's 95% full, well, we can talk about replacing that hard drive and getting your data switched over, or adding a second hard drive, or, we can see that, so we can start talking solutions. Our goal is to be proactive as opposed to reactive, always try to prevent the disaster rather than responding after the fact. So can't always do it, but we do our best to make sure we provide as many options, any possibilities to do that. So.
Excellent. And so when you're talking about that in the SaaS, how does that go together for me as an end user?
So what happens with SaaS is basically it goes hand in hand, because say for example, you're one of our full users that has all of our services. We monitor on a monthly basis. You are connected to our remote monitoring and management. We might even have physical hardware in there that we monitor and maintain. So what happens with the SaaS protection is, again, it runs on your entire domain. So if you have abc.com, it runs on the background of that, and I'll use Office 365. So it covers your email, your contacts, your calendar, SharePoint, and your OneDrive. It covers the big areas of the service. So it always constantly has a backup, it runs backup every hour. There's preset backup schedules. You can have them change to be more often, but it's already by default every few hours it runs an automatic snapshot of it. So say for example, I was talking to actually one of my partners, and they told me how they were affected directly. We were having a conversation, and so when the outage happened, she couldn't access her OneDrive at all. She couldn't access even the synchronized folder that's supposed to be, saved on your desktop, right? So she was dead in the water for until she actually went to her SaaS backup portal and ended up restoring all of her data locally to her hard drive, and she could at least operate for the next day or so until the outage was resolved. Now, what happens for a user who we take care of, instead of you have the option to go in and do it yourself. But say, for example, you're not comfortable doing it, or you'd rather just focus on something else. You open up a ticket or call us and say, I can't access my OneDrive, or I've accidentally deleted a document. I need a backup of it. No problem. We go in, we restore it. We'll drop it back into your OneDrive account or your OneDrive folder. And again, it may be a little bit outdated. It might be, a couple of hours or maybe a day, depending on when the last backup was. But at the end of the day, it is better than having lost that complete document, right? Depending on what it is. Same with emails. Say, for example, you're scrolling through your Outlook, you've deleted an email, and it was from a customer confirming anything, right? Could be of any type of email. Again, same thing. Give us a call. We can restore that email back into your inbox, and as if nothing happened. You've got it back. You can reference it. It's active. It's not just a copy of it where you can't. It's an active aspect of your email. You can reply to it, forward it, delete it again if you want. If you realize it's whatever you want to do, right? So that's the nice part about it. It does back up. And the nice thing is too is it detects ransomware. So if there is a possibility, you will get a detection notification in the backups that it does, saying that there's something there. It'll notify us on the back end saying that there is something potentially to maybe not use that backup, use one from a little bit older, or an older backup that might be that'll be cleaner. There's also disaster recovery. So in Canada, for this service, there's 2 data centers, one in Toronto, one in Calgary. So, eastern part of Canada goes to the Ontario one, and then it backs up to Calgary. So say, for example, Toronto one just, catches fire, burns right down and everything. You haven't lost your data in this situation. You've got a backup in Calgary that you can reference and reach out to. And then obviously our partner will rebuild the data center, pull that data, and there's no loss. There's really no loss of data, because the idea here is to do that. So what I'm going to do is I've been trying to actually share it out, and it seems to not be working the way I wanted to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to send the document out to everybody. Let's see if this actually works. There we go. So here's that document I was talking about with the shared responsibility model. It's just one giant scroll down, but near the bottom, you'll see a little chart that shows, it says responsibility, the type of service. So you have your software as a service, SaaS, platform as a service. So the 2 in the middle, they are still services that people would use. Examples of those, actually, I've got them referenced here to kind of give everybody an example. So SaaS services, again, Office 365, Google Workplace. The platform as a service would be, your Windows, Azure, or Google App Engine. And then the infrastructure as a service would be your Amazon Web Services, again, Microsoft Azure. Those are the types of services there. And you can see that. And then on-premises would be if you actually ran your own servers, whether it's email or any of the other services, your full responsibility there. So it shows it breaks down from service to service and it shows the responsibility for the customer and works its way all the way down. Now, in this case, it's specific to Microsoft, but again, it would be whoever it is. So anywhere that you have the lighter blue dot, if you're using Google, it'd be Google or Amazon or whoever the case may be. But you can see that the responsibility trickles down, but the further away you go from the SaaS, it becomes more and more relevant on the customer to have responsibility for the infrastructure, and at that point, you probably have to think of redundant network connections, redundant network and situations to make sure that if a switch goes down, you're ready to switch it out. You just want to make sure that your understanding of what's responsible to you as the user and what the responsibility is of the provider. Again, even here's a great quote from Microsoft here explaining how at the very bottom, they talk about how yes, there's disruptions, but it even talks about the liability, how they're not liable for the disruption or loss that you may suffer as a result. So that's where it stresses, they even stress it, that you should be considering some kind of backup for your own data. It's nice to have that, the connectivity, the constant connectivity, constant collaboration. But if you go down, you have to have some kind of backup and have a plan B, because essentially at the end of the day, Microsoft is not that plan B. They're strictly your plan A. So.
And so, and I know it's hard to nail down a cost or anything associated, but again, I'm like you, I'm a one person wearing many hats.
Yeah.
And so, like, to me, this is just, like you said, it's redundant, right? It's the insurance policy.
Yep.
And sometimes that's the last thing that we want to put money out on. So what are we looking at in costs?
For the SaaS protection, actually the licensing structure recently just changed. So it's actually a per license per user. So if it's just one person, you don't have to buy a pool of them, and it's actually just a few extra dollars on top. So it's typically per user, you're looking at about under $10 an additional license. So it's almost on par with, it's roughly around the same price as it is for the licensing for your Microsoft 365 per user, right? I mean, or your monthly, that is, right?
Yeah.
Your monthly, I think, if you buy directly from Microsoft, I think it ranges between, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's about 11 to 15 bucks a month directly from Microsoft. You buy it from somewhere else, prices vary. So yeah, we're right around the same. It's roughly around the same price as your license per month. And it's that cost of the cost of peace of mind. It's not quite. I don't think it's not a non-safe for workplace kind of comment or quote, but I always remember a movie quote from Alien versus Predator. I don't know if anybody's bothered to see that movie, but at one point they say somebody's asking somebody, they're going to go ice mountain climbing, and somebody's packing a gun. So the one says, they're like, in my careers of ice hunting or ice climbing, I've never seen anybody with a gun. So the response was, it's like a condom. I'd rather need it and not have it, and have it and not need it. So the same idea goes with the protection here, right? It's not a bad idea to have it and then be ready for it, as opposed to not having it, have the outage, and then what happens, right? Or if you delete that file, what happens, right? You're left with nothing. That file that could be lost could be that one file that's your core one that you use with every document. A lot of companies, smaller businesses, don't have a CRM. Maybe they have that spreadsheet that tracks client interactions. Then what? That one email that was a great contract and a great agreement that you had to sign off on and return back, and now you've lost it. You can always ask to have it resent, but it's that big difference, right? So it's always something there.
And just is there you said it's an hourly backup, is it?
Yeah, and then you can always there's backup schedules preset. So you can preset it to I think it's 3 times a day by default, but you can change it to do it more often as well. When we're setting it up, we can always discuss it and have what is it that you prefer to have, right? So but typically by default it is 3 times a day. I believe it's morning, afternoon, and at the end of the day. But again, it can always be scheduled and changed at different times. So
excellent. So does anybody else have any questions? Sorry, instead of me taking all the questions there, Dave.
Well, I was just going to make a comment earlier, but
yeah.
I think Thomas covered it very well, which was, my insurance agent, everybody pays insurance, car insurance, house insurance, whatever type of insurance. It's something you pay and hope you're never going to have to use, but when the house burns down, when the car accident happens, you're damn glad you've got it. And in business, if you suddenly lose, all your client list, all your your projects you're working on, all your inventory list, the stress that can be caused by that is horrendous. So just that, as Thomas said, and that's why I said you covered it very well, is the peace of mind that the insurance gives you, that you can drive the car, and know that if something happens, you're covered, and you're not going to lose the house. You're getting sued for $1 million, and you're covered. That simple peace of mind, knowing in the back of your head that everything's taken care of, just reduces one more stress that a business owner has.
And let's face it, as business owners, we have a lot of them as it is, right? So,
Oh, absolutely.
and I mean, the other thing is too, is, you know, I asked this for some of my other services I asked, but if somebody primarily uses something like Office 365 or G Suite, the question can be said here too, right? How much downtime can you afford, and how much is uptime worth to you? Because you know, you might lose that one document, but it could be a core document. So until you find it, retrieve it, or unfortunately have to recreate it, how much time have you spent doing that? So how much business have you lost? Have you lost a day's worth? You know, an hour, hours, days, weeks, months? Can you even rebound? I know in this case it may not be as drastic, but depending on the situation, it could be where, you know, it's something that, you know, could effectively, you know, slow you down for quite some time. I mean, you know, like I said, other products and services have, you know, maybe a larger scale where that question maybe kind of sinks in, you know, is a little bit more relevant in some of the other products and services. But I think that question goes to anybody, right? You could be running your entire business off of services like this, and if you go down, are you down for good? You down for the count, right? So.
I had a question. So if I'm already a subscriber to 365 or Office, whatever the proper term is, how do I go about getting?
And that's not a problem. I mean, if anybody
SaaS?
already has a subscription to these services, that's not the problem. What we do is that you would register through us or any other provider that you know would reach out that has these similar services. But the only thing we would need is your domain name, your proper domain name, so we can associate the account to the domain, and then it just runs in the back end to start grabbing the licenses or the user accounts, and then it just starts synchronizing from the domain to the service. That's at least with us. Maybe other companies might be a little bit different depending on the service they provide or how it runs in the back end. But with us, G Suite has an extra step, but it's all in the back end. As long as we have your registration information, your domain name, we set up the back end stuff, and then just go from there. You really, it's pretty seamless for the end user to really, they don't see much at all in the back end. So.
And it's all done remotely.
Yep, it's all cloud based. Everything's cloud. There's nothing local. There's nothing at all for you to install. Again, G Suite might be a little bit different. You might have to install something on your. I have to double check that. I don't remember right now. It's because both of them are. My Office 365 is a little bit different than the G Suite setup, but again, the setup process is straightforward. It's easy. There's not much to do. Once it's set up, as an end user, you don't need to worry about anything except something happens. Then you just, you know, you can log into your online portal and pull whatever you need. Or if we're the one taking care of your services, or you have a provider that takes care of your services, they can reach out on your behalf, set it up and restore it for you instead. So you can keep working, and you do what you do, we do what we do, kind of thing, right? So
from a security standpoint, everything's, you know, covered.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. In the back end, the data centers are secure, encrypted. There's no issues there. And like I said, the data centers themselves are redundantly backed up. In Canada, Toronto backs up to Calgary, Calgary backs up to Toronto. And so that's how that works. So there is redundancy and security measures in place for everything. So.
Okay.
All your servers are in Canada?
Yeah, there are there's for all of our services that require cloud-based backup, and any backups or anything are all cloud-based they are in Canada, Toronto and Calgary. If anybody has a preference to put them in the States, we can, but that's, you know, customers always right. So if there's a request for it, we'll gladly do it. But I mean, there's a Canadian option across the board for everybody. So.
No, it's because a lot of the businesses nowadays, you got the privacy legislation, so
Absolutely.
data has to be in Canada. It can't go to the States.
Exactly, and that's just it. And I mean, I was just, you know, obviously just being you know, if there is that odd request from a customer who happens to have needed in the States, hey, I'm not gonna say no. It's just wonder why. So.
Yeah, really. Well, let's go. Okay. Anybody else? Any questions there?
I'm going to ask an off topic, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Thomas, from speaking of security, for your computer, so that you're not getting hacked in, so that people are able to get into this information and possibly cause problems. What would you suggest is the best security that you can get for your computer?
So you're talking endpoint protection at that point, right?
Yes.
So just, well, I've got a few that come to mind, and I'm actually starting to explore another one. I'm just recently had a new partner reach out. The services look interesting, so I'm going to be exploring them. In the past, for the longest time, I've used Panda Security. They're actually I've used them since I feel like since they started at one point. I was using them as just an end user. Great, but they were just a terrible program for resources. They would just start eating away at your memory and everything. Great product. And now they've evolved great. I had to move away for other reasons. I would still use it. It's just something that had to move away for a different reason. I'm currently using Webroot for a lot of my customers. And then now I'm actually looking at partnering with a company by the name of Scout. They are a full cybersecurity partner. And what they do is they have an endpoint protection. They have a few other services as well that go hand in hand with what we provide. But the nice thing is that it's actively monitored by their security operations command center. So what happens is your endpoint protection runs normally like any other antivirus, like Panda or Norton or anything. It just runs on your computer and it scans. But say there's an example, there's an active alert that's tagged on your computer for whatever reason. It's not only you who sees it, that security center sees it, flags us as well. So we know what's going on. We'll reach out to you and say, hey, Dave, this is what's going on. We've got a notification. This is what's happened. You've got an infection. This is what it is. We have the steps to remediate it. Do you mind if we log in and take care of it for you? That would be more, that's more centered towards somebody who's on our more managed services for retail, just, day-to-day kind of stuff. Like I said, Panda, Webroot, those are good options.
What about, I use Kaspersky. What's your thoughts on that?
Personally, the only reason I would not say, and again, maybe it's, I've used it at other places. It's never been bad, but I mean, I always hear the whole thing where, they're a Russian, they've got, the whole Russian thing with them and all that. I've always been.
Oh, you're a conspiracy guy.
Not so much conspiracy, but it's just like, I always laugh. So it's like, you know what? I'd rather, there's other products that aren't tainted or don't have a question mark next to them. So I'd rather just recommend something different if I could.
Sure.
But I have deployed it to other places in the past. other people have it, as their main core.
From a technical standpoint, what do you think of it?
I've never had a problem with it. I mean, like I said, I had never really used it myself adamantly. I mean, I've had other customers I've deployed it for customers. It's easy to deploy. It's not a resource hog, which is always good. That's the one thing as somebody on my end, you want two things. You want it to be thorough on three things actually. Thorough on the scans, easy to deploy, and you don't want it to be a resource hog. You don't want to find out you have a customer calling saying, my computer's running slow. You go and you look and that's running 85% your memory, and you look at the main reason, and it's your antivirus. Well, what's the point of having it, right? It's better. You're better off running blind at that point. So it's nice. Those are the three things I look at, and like I said, Kaspersky's I've never had an issue on those three things, right? It's just okay. I've always once I saw that asterisk, I'm like, I probably won't recommend it, but if somebody's using it, I'm not going to say anything. But I just. It comes back to that. Like if any one of my other products ever came back with an asterisk like that, I'd move away because you know what? It's a harder sell at that point because somebody's gonna say, well, I heard this. Yeah, but even if I try to reassure people sometimes, they're adamantly not going to want to. So I'd rather just, find either have another product as another recommendation, or even myself move away from that product and look for an alternative because it might not be worth the headache of trying to sell a.
Sure. No, just for the general group that's here, Is there any particular program that you would recommend staying away from because it simply just, doesn't do the job?
I can't say because it doesn't do the job. For me personally, I always find over the years, I just think Norton is really, or Symantec is just kind of, to me personally at least, has taken steps down because every time you find something. Every time there's always an infection, download this add-on to remove it. Well, what the hell's the point? If I gotta download everything, what's the point of always having to download? An antivirus protection should at least, if it doesn't have the necessary needs to remove it, it should quarantine, should update the software itself, and then remove. I shouldn't have to be going to get an additional removal tool in order to do it, right? Now, mind you, the removal tools typically are free. They're not charging you anything extra. But
just an extra step.
Yeah, and I don't see why it would be necessary, right? So
I used Norton years ago, and this is back in the day of 286 computers, and the computer ran pretty well. And then we put Norton on there, and I left it on for about 7 days and then threw it in the garbage. Literally, it just killed the machine. The resources were absolutely atrocious what it used. And I mean, Norton had this good name always about, the number one program for doing this, this, and this, but a total memory hog, horrible, horrible stuff. Since then, I've used a program called Trend Micro.
Yep.
I think it's British, and I get it quite cheaply as a retired university employee. It's like $15 a year for the licenses.
And it's actually very minimum resources too. That's the one thing about Trend
Yeah.
Micro. It's very minimum on the resources.
Yep.
Almost like it's not even there.
Yeah,
That's
it
definitely one.
runs
So,
nicely, and I've never, I mean, I've probably used it for 20 years now. I've never
Nice.
ever had a problem with it.
at the end of the day, a lot of times when it comes to programs like that, it's also it's almost a pick your poison kind of thing. Maybe you've tried a few and you like one, you hate one. I mean, with providers, sometimes they have the one that they, typically, because it's easy for them to manage and maintain, because it's something that we can easily, add to. For myself, for example, the ones that I've mentioned here, they're easy to add on to our RMM, so we can keep an eye on whether or not it's for some reason stopped working, or if it's out of date. We don't necessarily have those capabilities with all of them. We're only capable with some. So that's why I typically recommend a few that I can for my customers, because I want to be able to know, right? I don't want to be blind as in any way, shape, or form when it comes to managing the customer. So when we can get a notification that the antivirus program is stopped running, or if it's out of date, that's why we typically try. I mean, if a customer has something that they prefer, I'm not going to say no until maybe renewal time for them. If I know that their license is coming up, then we can have that conversation. But if I picked some, got on a brand new customer, they just signed the subscription, month 1 of 12, I'm not going to turn around and say, hey, dump it and renew. We can always work on, something there and then figure it out when, month 11 of 12 comes up, right? So.
Yeah, no, I think just as business owners, security is of course, paramount.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's just it, right? And that's kind of why I'm looking at this new provider, because this new partner, because it has a lot of different, it even has a security level on, your Office 365 and your SaaS protection too. I haven't gotten too much into them to really talk too much about them, but I'm actually, it's interesting because they actually scan at the server level on your account for Office 365 for any ransomware attacks, any breaches, any attempted breaches. And then again, I get notifications of that. I'll notify the customer, but then we can work on, if the password has to get changed, or if there actually has been some, and we can work on, I found it really interesting that was something that could be done there. So,
yeah, I gotta stop using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as my password.
Or that.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1 works better.
There you go.
Yeah. ABC, that's another good
Yeah.
one.
Billy, you had made a comment about Office 365, if you want to share.
Yeah. So, hey, Thomas, I'm a friend of Thomas's. I wanted to join and support. So hello to the group. Yeah. So for Office 365, I mean, it's one of the more pricier plans, but if you do go with that plan I posted in the chat, which is premium, you do get ATP, which is antivirus and threat protection in one. And just to kind of bounce back on the antivirus stuff. So I work for a service provider in Michigan. We support about 150 credit unions across the US. So we were running Kaspersky exclusively until about 2 years ago. Switched to a product called Carbon Black, which I would highly not recommend. That's a cloud-based antivirus. Had a plethora of problems with that. And now we're running exclusively Microsoft Defender ATP. So kind of like Thomas said, I guess the only recommendation I can make is every antivirus has its own pros and cons. It definitely, one antivirus is going to work better in one environment than the other. So as long as you're vetting them out, putting them on some test PCs, making sure that it works with your suite of apps, that's kind of the recommendation I can make. Norton, yeah, stay away from Norton regardless. Anything with that name on it is it's long gone. But yeah, from an antivirus perspective, I would say Carbon Black for me was the one that we had the most issues with, but could work good for you. But if it is something that you're going down the cloud SaaS path of, it might be worth paying the extra few bucks a month to get it included in your subscription.
Yeah, and Microsoft recently did that, joining with Azure, right, for their security as well.
Yep.
So they've just kind of heightened that. That's all I've been running on, I must admit, on my computer. I'm stuck with the Microsoft Loop, which is just different than the Google Loop, right? One or the other.
Yeah, that's pretty much like those are your two. When it comes to your SaaS services, it's the two big ones are typically your Google and your Microsoft. I mean, I think Amazon tried it, and I don't know, they shifted away from it. I know at one point, because I know they still have their web services where people can host, their websites and stuff like that. Like that's a different aspect. But I mean, yeah, as far as SaaS, when it comes to the actual software, like I mean, with Microsoft, you get your Outlook, your Word, Excel, Access, all that, right? And then with Google, you'll get your Docs, Sheets, Slides, Gmail, Calendar, Contacts, Sites. Notice how I know more. I mean, I'm not a cheap plug, but G Suite, we do resell G Suite. I'm not gonna, but I mean, I'm also looking at the fact of adding 365 or moving away from moving over to that. I just find that it's because I mean, here I am. I use G Suite for some, and then I have Office 365 without the email services for everything else. Like I still use Word, Excel, Outlook. I'm thinking, well, what the hell's the point, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I may as well just use. Why am I paying for two different services? So I find myself doing that, and I know a lot of people do it as well. So it's something to, if you provide both, you can have that conversation with customers and see what works best for them, right? So, yeah, I mean, those are pretty much the two juggernauts when it comes to the SaaS services. I'd be surprised if there's anything else right now that's as commonly used or known as those two. So don't know what the future holds, but those two are definitely it.
I actually don't use 365, but I have Microsoft. I found this company, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years ago. I think they're based out of England. It's a website. You can buy the software in Canadian dollars, US dollars, pounds. Last time I bought it, it was last year in the fall for my desktop at home. It was the full suite of Microsoft Office. It's like $57 per version. And I'm like, why do I want to pay $30 or $40 a month when I can buy this once?
No, and that's the only question to keep in mind there too is what version of Office was it, if you don't mind me asking?
2019.
Okay, so that is a standalone. So Microsoft still have a few versions trickling around still. They had, I'm pretty sure 19 is the last one so far. I don't know if they're going to put another one out. So you're correct. There is a standalone version of 2019. I can only imagine, like everything else, it will. And I don't know if they've already issued the end of life on that or if it hasn't been issued yet because it's still 19, 20. It's still fairly new. But for example, older versions, 2007, 2010, 2013, they've all reached end of life, much like Windows 7 and 8, right? So, I mean, it's just a matter of time for even 19 to reach that end of life. And I'm hoping they do, but I'd be very shocked if they actually put out another standalone version and didn't force everybody onto the subscription based, because, recurring revenue, right? At the end of the day, most businesses, that's what they're looking for. So, I mean, if you can get recurring revenue on everybody, that's, Microsoft.
Yeah. It's good for them. It's not good for the user.
Exactly, right? I mean, but yeah, I mean, definitely you're right. I mean, 2019 is not a bad way to go if for those who prefer the standalone version. I mean, but I would just keep in mind that eventually you probably get the end of life notifications, and I'm not sure what'll come next from them. So
I think Office 2022 is the last one. If I'm not mistaken.
They actually put out another version. They're actually putting a standalone version out.
Yeah, they said they were the second half of next year they were going to put one out, and I think like most like Exchange and stuff, those are going to be their last on-prem before they push everybody up to the milk you every month plan.
Well, that's the way everybody wants to go.
5 or 6 years, so that's all right.
Yeah, for sure.
Everybody wants to move to the subscription model. It's just, as I said, it's a continuous cash cow.
Yeah.
And if you have no other choice, if there is no standalone versions, then you're stuck.
That's just it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I understand the recurring model. I mean, but when it comes to software like Office and like that, I mean, it does get pricey. I mean, when you got to start putting 100 users on a recurring model, it's 100 users that you're paying for every month. It does start to add up. I don't dispute that. But I mean, the pros are it's constantly updated. You're always going to make sure there's a bit of there's a little bit more responsibility as much as we think that there's a little bit more responsibility that does fall on Microsoft at that point for having a monthly subscription. It's basically, what are you getting for your money, right? It's not just the service. It's on them to make sure that you're getting the uptime, you're getting the product, but at the same time, they also have to it's on them to really push out and make sure that it's also secure, right? Because I think the last couple of days here, I've gotten probably, maybe about the last week, I've probably had to update 3 or 4 times on my Office suite, right? So it goes to them as well. I mean, you don't get me wrong, you do get the updates on the standalone as well, but I mean, they do have to hold themselves to, like, there is something for your money coming on the monthly subscription, right? So
What was, you said that the Office 365 was down a number of times last week. What exactly happened there?
I've been reading. I don't think. I mean, they just basically attribute. They're calling it an outage. There's no real specifics to it. But the software affected most was Outlook, SharePoint, and Teams. And OneDrive. So it wasn't even, at least if it was contacts or calendar, it may not be as bad. It's bad, but it's not as bad, right? But you're looking at the core ones, right? So and people were just, it grinded to a halt. And I read it was, I'd have to say probably about almost a half dozen times in a 2-week stretch. I don't know. The first one was bad, but I think it was also, I think some of the smaller ones happened as they were trying to reboot services. I mean, I spent some time at BlackBerry for time, and same thing. When there was an outage, you had that really big one, but then you had smaller disruptions along the way as services came back up, right? Because you're booting things up, you're bringing it up. So I can get those smaller outages that happened once that first one triggered. You're gonna probably get some smaller ones, but again, it rippled. I mean, everyone just, with all the subscribers that you have, it doesn't take long for people to realize something's going on, and they start complaining, and it makes the news quick. So I mean, think about it. BlackBerry at its prime, how many times when outages happened, it made the news quick. CTV had their blimp cameras around the offices and everything, and I actually jumped on there just after I got it there, just after one of the first big outages. So I started there in May of 2010. So I think it was December. It was around Christmas time. I think it was either 09 or 08, and I heard about it. I heard what happened. I heard how it was made worse, and it was the stories I've heard from the back end of there. It's just something else. It was interesting times.
Trying to think, I'm sure I was in the office last week and I used all the Microsoft Office and I didn't have any issues.
Yeah,
Last
that's the
week,
same with me, because my work laptop, it's Office 365, and I can't say I've noticed any disruptions. I haven't even noticed a lot of big updates. Sometimes you come in when they've had problems, because you go turn on your machine in the morning and it says Office is going to update now, and you're like, great, I need to do something.
Exactly, right? Because I always get that splash screen there, that little white splash screen that, the track bar, and then it says close down these applications so we can finish updating. It's like, you just did that a couple of days ago. Seriously? Leave me alone.
And it always runs slow after an update. It's like it's a dog for that first couple times till you've had the power on, power off a few times. It just runs horribly.
Well, for me, actually, more so than I had the one time. Thankfully, it wasn't anything big. It was just some quick little notes that I was making. But when it came back, when the programs came back up, Excel thankfully gave me the retrieval option, because I had a couple of spreadsheets open, and I'm glad but Word didn't bother to give me the retrieval. It's like, and if it was important, where were you at?
Yeah.
So, but I'm thankful at least Excel came back and I got my documents retrieved, because I had to update some information for some clients that Excel decided to format on its own for me, first of all. So I had to go back and find the original information. So that's always fun.
Yeah, one of the functions I actually hate in those programs is autosave. And when I've reinstalled programs, it's the first thing I go turn off, because it's making copies of copies and it's throwing them here and there. And then after a while, you're like, really? Like, if I'm not smart enough to hit the save button once in a while, that's my problem.
Yeah, fair enough. No, you know what? I agree with you to a point, because there has been points where I've forgotten to save, and then I was thinking, oh crap. So I see both sides of that coin. So absolutely.
Yeah, I find with the auto save, I want to have one original document and then make slight changes as the names, and I forget that it's going to automatically save it, and I'm changing my original with not having an original left.
Yeah, that's it.
remembering to save as before I start making any changes.
Yep.
Which is,
Quick question, Thomas.
Yeah.
The issue that I'm having, and I don't know if anybody else has ever had it before, is I'm having interruptions with my internet. I had the cable guy come in. He says you're getting great, feed through the lines here. He feels it's the router, and he says there's been a lot of attacks on routers lately.
So are you having a hardwire, or is it hardwire plugged in, or you got wireless, or?
I've got the D-Link router.
Are you plugged in by Ethernet right now, or are you running, like, are you on your laptop right now, and are you running via wireless, or are you connected?
I don't know, running wire. Well, no, actually, I'm hardwired to the computer, but the other stuff, like our TVs, are all Wi-Fi.
And that's where you're seeing the problems then, or?
And that's where we don't have a lot of things. We have the 2 TVs. We have a couple of tablets. That's pretty much it. We keep getting disruption. He said that they've been running into a lot of attacks on routers. So I don't know if that's a security issue that other people have been having, or
It's
if that's
possible. I mean, a lot of times, if your firmware is out of date, that is a big thing where you could start seeing. You will get attacks. You read them everywhere. There's vulnerabilities in a lot of these devices lately. And manufacturers will push out a new version of the firmware to try and close those up. The other thing is a lot of times there's services that may be open that you don't need, that other people may or may not be taking advantage of. That's an unfortunate part, like UPnP. It's basically used a lot of times. That's a service that's, I don't know why, but by default in a lot of home-based routers is turned on by default. And what it does is that it helps for connections for devices like TVs, media players, and stuff like that.
right.
And what happens is it's very easy to plug in. I mean, just basically, it's a quick connect almost kind of thing. It's a quick and easy way to connect to those devices. And if it's turned on, other people can potentially, and then that's the hard part. I mean, for me personally, I always shut that service off, and then I just connect the old-fashioned way, like connect the Wi-Fi. Don't use any other additional. I consider them a convenience feature. I'd rather lose the convenience and potentially save some headaches sometimes there too.
Just from a business standpoint, I guess I just bringing up the fact that make sure that your routers are secure, because
Exactly. Firmware is always good to make sure it's up to date. I mean, if you're not comfortable, if you're not overly savvy on things like that, it's not a bad idea to have maybe somebody come in who, is familiar with the devices you have on site. It might cost you a couple bucks, but I mean, have them maybe do an audit to make sure that, there's not anything open, ports aren't open that shouldn't have to be, services aren't running that don't need to be, just stuff like that. I mean, those would be from, especially those, expensive, if you're in a larger setting, or where you've got those big Cisco routers, or those commercial grade, or large business, big business Cisco routers and stuff like that. Services are sometimes, ports need just a quick audit check to make sure that ports aren't open that don't need to be. Specifically, one of the big ones is remote desktop for RDP port. I can't remember. I think by default, I think it's 3000 or 34. I can't remember offhand. That one is, I like to call the chef's delight. If that one's open and it's set by default, and it hasn't been changed, a lot of people go right in. They can use that real quick to get in and just have a field day. They can start poking around on, and then if your computer by default has remote desktop services running, it's an easy way in. So I mean, if you have to use it, I'm not saying don't, just make sure that you have somebody set it up properly where they at least.
Well, that's why I want to have you come in, because I'm running the network myself. I'm out there, my name is out there, my website's out there, and everything else. And if people say, oh, hey, this is the guy who's running the network, what kind of information can we get through his system and everything else? I want to make sure I'm locked down tight.
Yeah, we can take a look at that, Dave. Absolutely. So.
Yeah, you said with the outages there, Merrick, one thing I've noticed now, I use DSL because I really don't want to support Cogeco. I'm a big hater of Cogeco. So, but there's just so many people working from home, and you can see it at 9 o'clock in the morning. a lot of these networks, even in businesses, even in our office here, where we've got more professional grade stuff in the office, sometimes it just goes down. There's just so much load on the network now that we have all these students doing schoolwork from home rather than in a classroom. It's put a big burden on the infrastructure. And yeah, I see my TV sometimes. It goes, it'll say, hey, the network is down. Then 2 minutes later, it says, oh, the network is up. And it's like,
Yep.
okay, well,
Well, see, I
just that's
use,
a bandwidth kind of problem, but not bandwidth in my house. It's bandwidth between me and wherever that next router station is, like, out in the big world, right?
and that's why I use Ookla. I jump on Ookla really quick online to check my speeds and everything else whenever there's an outage, and the speeds seem to be fine. That's why I had the guy come in and swap out the router with a new the modem with a new modem. But he said everything, like line wise and everything else, you're getting phenomenal speeds. It's not that. As he says, if it happens again, you know, it's you got to look at the router situation, because he says they've been getting a lot of attacks, and he says you definitely want to make. I told him I run the business network, and he says you definitely want to make sure you get that looked into. So yeah, I mean, Ookla is great for checking your speeds. I don't know if anybody knows the site. It's just an online way of checking your computer speed, your uploads, downloads. But yeah, just for me personally, I would feel more comfortable getting somebody in, making sure that everything's, you know, set up correctly.
Oh, absolutely, and I appreciate it. Yeah, I'd definitely come take a look. We'll touch base after this call, Dave, if you want.
Sure.
We'll get together. The other thing too that again, I'm kind of veering off into other products and services, so I apologize. We're kind of off the topic here, but one of the other things too is we do have a full suite of networking equipment, and one of them is a router that has an LTE failover. So in the event your primary connection that actually goes down, it's an LTE failover. It runs until the primary comes back up. So with everybody, you know, I mean, let's face it, right now, a lot of people are going to VoIP business solutions, and, you know, you've got your, you know, you might have your cloud storage and everything. Again, if you go down and you don't have a backup, how long are you down for? How much business does that cost you? That LTE failover, I'll be honest, again, I am a Cogeco customer, third parties thing, but I still run on Cogeco lines down here. It's like the mob. If you want to run Cogeco stuff or cable connection, you're still running Cogeco lines. And so what happened is, there's been issues myself, Dave. I know what you're talking, like, I mean, I see the same thing, like everything seems good, but I can tell when I'm having issues because my failover flips over. So I know that it's some kind of a connection problem, because it'll flip, because it's obviously, the modem is doing its own test, realizing that there's something wrong. So it flips over to my failover. And there was, you know, at the peak of everything, I felt like I was living on that failover. I didn't think I had a proper primary connection. And then the last week now, again, same thing. I've been noticing, I check my logs and I see that I'm flipping onto it far more often, but it's keeping me going. I mean, for all I know, like, I'll see things even as I'm talking. So far today, knock on wood, it's been pretty good. Or else I'd see I'd see a notification, you know, on here as we're talking, saying something about inconsistent network connection. I know that. So at that point, I would know that the LTEs are on. And, you know, I'm soaking it all up with the video conversation and this. And so I know that I'm not probably, you know, I might sound like Charlie Brown's teacher on your side of things for all I know, but you know, that at least I'm connected still. Again, I'm on VoIP phone. So if I go down on primary, at least I can still make that phone call, or that customer can still call me. It's something that for some, you know, for business has that need. It's something to consider. Again, your own provider can, I'm not, you know, I always say this, if you have your own provider, I might be talking about a product or solution, but always, you know, I'm just, you know, letting people know that it's out there. I'm not, if you need somebody, great, not, you know, give me a call. I'd be more than happy to talk and, you know, see what we can do. But I mean, if you have somebody or know somebody, again, I'm not going to try and, you know, poach that relationship, because I'm sure it's probably, you know, a couple of years deep and it's probably pretty strong. So.
The other thing out there too, when it comes to routers is, and I had this problem many years ago, is the quality of your router, because not all routers are created equally, and some are more robust than others.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I used to buy D-Link and a whole bunch of these other ones, and I think right now, I'm trying to think, I think it's an Asus one. And I used to burn out routers literally with all the devices running in the house. 18 months. That
Wow.
one's overheated. It's done. It's like that. It's done. It's done. And then they had these. I think it's ASUS, and it was pretty much the first year they brought out the 2.4 and 5 gig dual band routers.
That's what I've got.
And I have now had that router for 6 years.
Yeah. That's what I've got.
And the signal, like I'll go 3 houses away from mine on the street, and as I walk up towards the house, I'll see my phone switch over and go, oh yeah, you're on your home Wi-Fi now. I don't have a dead spot anywhere in my house. I have to say, it's been the best router I've ever owned, and like I say, I've had it for, I don't know, at least 6 years now, and it's pretty much flawlessly.
And that's exactly, I mean, and that it comes down to twofold. You get what you pay for, and you get what you get what you need, basically, right? I mean, I would imagine that one you've got is probably something around their gaming line, like their high performance stuff, even for home based. Like I know Asus has a multitude of lines. They have their regular home based equipment, but then they have their gaming and performance stuff, which is probably something similar to what you probably got in that realm there. And those are the ones that, again, they can take, they pump out more. You can push it harder. They have better coverage for Wi-Fi. But again, if you're going to anywhere you go, if you buy something off the shelf and you're paying, a couple, but it's going to be your basic home one. It's not going to be meant to take a beating.
Yeah, and I paid. I know that even when I bought it at the time, it was around $250, and you could buy a router for like 80, 110 bucks back then. I was like, okay, you know what? If this thing lasts twice as long, so if I get 3 years out of it, I've got my money out of it. Yeah, I'm at 6, 7. I don't know. It's been a long ride.
And that's just it, right? So I mean, there's a lot of things to keep in mind when you're looking for them, right? And at home, as we plug in more devices, the more devices you plug in, you always got to keep that in mind. So I mean, if you're at home and you just you've got your computer, maybe a TV and a tablet, one of those $80 buck ones might be sufficient. But I mean, if you've got 2-3 tablets, 2 phones, a computer, a laptop, 3 TVs, and you start adding those devices in, yeah, it won't take long.
Just as a side story, and this has nothing to do with anything, but the cable guy was telling me about a house that on the west side of Windsor where there was 25 people living in the same house. Okay, the landlord was basically charging so much per person, and including Wi-Fi, but he had just a basic Wi-Fi, and they were wondering why their Wi-Fi was so slow. And it's like you got 25 different computers, tablets, laptops. So yes, as he says, if you're going to do something like that, you need a little bit more of an upgrade.
At that point too, it comes twofold. It's not just your device, but it's also your connection. You want to make sure that, I have a sneaking suspicion when landlords do that, they're looking at the, that 10 meg or 6 meg line connection, and, like again, that, $50 route or wireless router. And yeah,
he said they should have a commercial line with a hub.
Exactly. You should start spreading it around. And I mean, you got to start thinking at that point, you'd have to start thinking about, putting hardwire connections into some of the rooms to at least alleviate the wireless traffic, right? To have somebody plug in their laptop hardwired or something hardware to alleviate that. But then you got to make sure concurrent connections on that router, you got to make sure that it can take because if you've got 25 people, figure 3 devices, a laptop, tablet, and phone. So you're looking at, that just jumped up quite a bit right there.
Oh, yeah.
So it doesn't take much. So.
That was my daughter's biggest complaint when she was in university living, was if she really had to get a project done, she had to go to the library.
Because everyone was soaking up the internet at home.
Yeah. And it was gaming and videos and streaming, yeah.
Exactly.
And those lines in the university, if you're hardwired in, their networks are fantastic. When the internet was in its early development back in the 90s, when everybody had modems, I worked at McMaster, and the first time I had a computer, it was like, wow, this stuff is fast. And then I would go home and I'd try to download something at home, and it would take hours to download a file that if I had downloaded it at work, it would have taken me like less than a minute, because they had these T1 lines, and they were just like blazing fast. It was just
tuition
silly.
everybody pays in post-secondary, they better take care of. So
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Bill. Yeah, really. Okay, folks, any other questions for Thomas? All right, so Thomas has got his information in the chat, as well as you can reach out to Ivan, Thomas, for everybody who was on here.
Absolutely. No. And again, thank you again for having me, Catherine. I appreciate it. Everyone, it was a pleasure meeting you and talking to you. I hope
Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I have the habit of talking, so I'm glad. I hope I haven't talked anybody's ear off this time. And if I haven't, maybe I can jump back on again for another topic. Maybe you never know. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, usually we do once a month or so. I'll ask the members, like, what are you wanting to know about and that. So we'll certainly keep you in mind for those, because you are a plethora of information for us, expert information as well.
I'll suggest maybe a router show. Give us some of the newer, because you know what, technology changes, and for those of us, then we buy something, we've had it for years and years and years now. What's out there that's newer, better, robust, and there is so much different things, and you can sort of show those budget versus some of those more.
I could definitely do some research on some of the on one or two of each in each category, and then maybe even go through a little bit of some of the networking stuff that we actually provide as well, if somebody's interested too. That way, kind of compare what we've got compared to what's on the shelf and what's out there, and kind of thing. So
perfect. Okay, so we'll touch base.
Yeah, absolutely.
So today is Thursday. Monday is either Mastermind, and remember it's November, so it's new Mastermind month. The Mastermind is $25 for members and $75 for non-members. Share gives us an hour and a half twice that month. You can't beat the price. It's a really good awakening, a reawakening, if you will, right? And if you're not in the Mastermind, Coffee with Ivan is at 9:30 on Monday. And then, as always, Wednesday night is Invest 2021 with Stephen and Melissa. The presentation last night was awesome with the lady from Forex. And she had all great information. And with that, have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks again, Thomas.
Thank you. Yes, have a great weekend.
We'll see you a little late for the Coffee with Ivan. I'll be on about 10 o'clock tonight.
Okay. I'll be in the Mastermind, so nice. We'll miss each other on Monday, but All right, take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
Bye.